Hi, I'm Adam, and this is Stories from the East and West. Normally, I'm joined by my co-host Nitsan, but due to the current pandemic lockdown, she's far away from a decent accessible microphone. Don't worry though, she is fine. 76 years ago this November, a US Navy ship carrying 700 Polish orphans arrived in Wellington, New Zealand. This boat full of Polish children who had been deported to Siberia with their families had finally found a sanctuary on the other side of the planet from their homeland. Keep listening to find out how they got there and what happened next. Coming up on Stories from the East and West.
Zlín, Praha, Warszawa, Madrid, London, Paris, New York, Casablanca.
Where you see a kind of totality of the human presence.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is exactly
Tak jak my w życiu, nigdy do końca nie ma odpowiedzi i nie będzie. To jest takie...
Stories from the Eastern West.
My name is Piotr. I was born in Poland, but when I was 2.5, my parents immigrated to New Zealand, so pretty much as far away as you could possibly get. While growing up, I'd heard about how a boat full of Polish children had arrived in Wellington, the capital, during World War II. I didn't really know much about it, and 7 years ago when I moved back to Poland, I still didn't. I was immediately captivated by this epic and unlikely journey that landed 700 Polish orphans in a place that they hadn't even known existed. I could also relate to their experience of growing up on the other side of the world from your country of birth. I managed to track down 4 of the children and got them to tell their story. Their names are Stanisław Manteres, Józef and Stefania Zawada, and Wisza Świters.
My name is Stanisław Manteres, and I live in Lower Hutt in New Zealand. After the invasion of Poland by Russia, 3 weeks after the invasion of Poland by Germany, our story started. We lived peacefully in a village in what was then Eastern Poland, what is now the Ukraine. My father was a farmer, and we were part of the around 1.5 million of Polish citizens who were deported by the Russians to right across the Soviet Union. I was the youngest in our family. I was only 4 when I was deported, but my memory of those events is much more clear than the events of yesterday.
I'm Stefania Zawada, one of the Polish children who arrived in New Zealand in 1944. My life was blissful in my childhood. That was up to 5 years of age when the World War II broke out and the Russian soldiers arrived and they told my mum to pack. We were taken to the nearest railway station and loaded on trains.
I was born in Wollin in 1933. I don't remember much from my earlier years, but I do remember that in 1940 we got sent to Archangel in Siberia by the Russians.
My name is Malwina Zofia Rubisz-Świters. My family, my parents and the younger brother were deported from Lviv to Siberia. They were taking people during the night. They would go into different homes and take people and onto the train. And sobieraj z wieszczami, you know what that means? Get ready with your things. You've got 20 minutes to get packed. So, and took us to the railway station, and there was a long train, but the train was not for people, but to carry animals across. So it just had a little windows at the top of the carriages.
Very crowded, extremely crowded. We were all squeezed up. The stench was, I think I still can remember the stench. cold and utter lack of hygiene, where a hole in the wagon would suffice for the toilet.
I remember someone saying, "Oh my God, we're crossing the border of Poland." And then people started crying and started praying. And that's how we left the border of Poland. And we were taken a long way through Russia. We were in the train for about almost 3 weeks. And by the time where we got out of it, it was in Russian Siberian forests. We found that they were deported from Lvov, intelligentsia, teachers, lecturers, they're taking them to Siberia and telling them, "This is where you're going to die, this is where you're going to die."
We were transported to the northern part of European Russia, which is in the Republic of Komi, and we were taken to a labor camp. This is a forced labor camp, where we were intended to work as slave labor in the forest, felling forest. It was a timber industry. My father worked in the forest. My two elder sisters, who were at that time about 14 and 12, they were also made to go into the forest.
The difficult part of it was, of being there, was that there was constant hunger. Everything was rationed. You worked, you performed your norm, and you were given a sheet of paper, and then you could collect your bread from the shop.
The food, it was not enough to sustain life. You had to, you virtually had to sell things that you had with you. By the time the 2 years elapsed, we had hardly anything. Clothing was, rags and not sufficient to survive in the cold there. But we did survive. The family did survive that camp, and I was in the kindergarten age at that time, so I remember the classes in the kindergarten. We were told, indoctrinated, that there is no God, that we should forget about our beliefs and the beliefs of our parents, and there's only one person who is mightier than any God, is Joseph Stalin, and they used to call him Batyushka Stalin, which means grandfather, a nice grandfather, Stalin. And the scene which is fixed in my memory is a portrait of Stalin hanging on the wall, all smiles and benign looking. And she said, "Now we're going to show you that there is no God." So she told us to pray to God in our own way. And then she said, "Okay, ask now God to send you sweets." We prayed to God, who did not send us the sweets. We prayed to Stalin, and lo and behold, the sweets started to fall out of Stalin's portrait. We were tiny kids, but not that stupid. We could see the ploy. I remember not being impressed with that at all. When we went back to our barracks after the classes, told our parents what happened, and they became very irate. So they went to the commandant of the camp, and told him that he controls our bodies, but leave our souls alone. He said, don't dare to do that again.
Of course, things changed when Germany attacked the Soviet Union.
At 4 o'clock this morning, Hitler attacked and invaded Russia. Without declaration of war, the German bombs rained down from the sky upon the Russian cities.
And Russia finds herself on the side of allies. And our government in exile wants to save as many people as possible. And that's where General Anders managed to start Polish army. And about 72,000 men were taken. And of course, Stalin wanted them to fight in Russia. But Hitler was moving so fast and so on, and Anders managed to get this Polish army out of Russia. But as far as the civilians were concerned, Polish civilians, only about 36,000 managed to be taken out.
In our camp, the Polish people got together and they got a train and tried to get out as far as possible.
It took us almost 4 or 5, perhaps up to 6 months to traverse the distance from the north of Russia down to the south of Russia.
And on the way there, my father died in the train of starvation, sort of. And when the train stopped in Kazakhstan, he was just taken out of the train, and that was the end of that. And then Mom, she just collapsed one day, and that was that. And that left the three of us, 3 brothers, and that's how we became orphans, of course.
We actually did manage to get down to the Republic of Uzbekistan. By that time, my parents were very, very ill, so there was only then the 2 of us left, my sister and I, because the rest of the family was taken to the hospital. We had no food at all. Virtually we'd go out to the fields and eat the roots of the local weed, and that's how we survived.
There was news of Polish army going to Iran to fight in the Middle East, and the Polish army took as many orphans as possible because in interim there were many families, like my husband's family, where both parents died. And so they tried to collect the orphans from around the countryside.
I remember the scene where over the hillock, a horse-drawn vehicle, which seemed to be occupied by bandits, all bearded and skeletons and rags. So I started to run away, and there was this Polish woman. She called out to us, "Dzieci, children, don't run away. I think this is the Polish army." So they took us.
We were taken to Krasnovodsk, which was the big port on the Caspian Sea, from which Poles were being sent to Persia.
We traveled from Krasnovodsk on a boat, very much overloaded boat, I would say, because there was sort of only a sitting space.
There was a panic to get on because some people, perhaps many people, were not allowed on the ships because the Russian secret police, the NKVD, had lists of whom they considered to be persona grata. Imagine being, after all these years, months, being allowed out of Russia. You actually stopped and told to get off.
My parents expected to be able to get on a boat and get permit to leave the Soviet Union, but that no longer could, and they were actually arrested and they were told to take up Russian citizenship, and they both of them refused, and they were placed into prisons.
We were taken through Caspian Sea to Pahiatua, that's the harbor in Persia. And the International Red Cross was looking after us there. But we were in such a very bad state that it was bad for Stalin, so he said, no more out. So only about 36,000 civilians got there to Pahiatua,
And that was really a haven because there was sand there was water there was, they set up camps for us. And this is in Iran, which was a rather poor country at the time, poor because of internal wars. But they still they managed to feed us.
Very shortly afterwards, when the orphanages in Isfahan were ready, all fitted out with beds, etc., we were taken to Isfahan by buses.
Isfahan was the old capital city, older than Tehran.
The ladies in charge of this place, the Polish ladies, they wanted to start teaching. And the lessons were in the sand. We had nothing to write with, so finger in the sand. That was the blackboard. So we started the schooling, but then a new blackboard was provided. Beautiful green, clear, no marking, none of this yet. And I remember being the first boy to be told to write on that board.
We had lessons only in the morning because most children were, if not sick, they were completely depleted of all strength. And we had rest in the afternoon. But still, we could learn quite a bit.
Iran became dangerous for the Poles to stay there for a number of reasons. One is the Russians were really, their influence in the north of Iran was very strong. There was a good chance that we would be back to Siberian slave camps. There was also the Germans knocking at the Caucasian mountains for the oil fields. So we were not in a very good situation. So the Polish government in exile, situated in London, tried to prevail upon the allied countries, to take some of the children for the duration of the war.
Groups were sent to Africa or something or other. And so there were fewer and fewer of us there. And at one time, Polish embassy noticed that, New Zealand invited 700 Polish children and caregivers. New Zealand? New Zealand was there. Never heard of New Zealand. So my mum wrote to my father, who was in the army, and Dad wrote a letter and said, "It looks as if we're not going to have free Poland we're fighting for. If you can, go to New Zealand, and if I survive, I'll join you."
We were selected to go to New Zealand, so we went to Bombay, where we boarded into a proper sort of a army transporting ship by the Americans.
It was huge, like a 10-story building, which it probably was, and it was carrying New Zealand and Australian soldiers on leave from the war front back to their homelands. And that trip was food was just I'd never seen so much food. My bunk was next to the kitchen door. I was always first out there, and cook would call out, "Have you washed yourself?" So no, I haven't washed myself yet. Oh, come on, just load up your tray with food. We arrived in New Zealand, in Wellington, 1st of November of 1944. Beautiful day, it's like today, beautiful. Anyway, the welcome was an exceptional welcome. Prime Minister of New Zealand was there, and the Polish consul from the Polish government in exile in London. There was a whole bevy of volunteers, nurses from the hospitals, and who had the night before prepared huge amounts of sandwiches at the nearby railway station, which is Wellington Railway Station.
The scouts had little boxes for us. In the boxes were biscuits and sandwiches and a green apple. And we liked the biscuits and the sandwiches, and we thought, why don't they let the apples ripe? Why do we get green apples?
There were 2 trains which took us to the township of Pahiatua, north of Wellington. It's a small town. At the time, it only had about 2,000 people. It serviced the surrounding farmland, which was beautiful, flat and rolling pasture land, mainly sheep and cattle. It's an epitome of a quiet New Zealand town. And on the way, we were greeted by the New Zealand public. Even the children were standing out in the farmland and waved to us as we passed. The camp was ready for us. It was a camp at one time. It was a race course. Then it was remade into a camp for like the Germans, Italians, and whoever else stood on that side of the wall. But they were taken out of the camp and put into Songs Island, which is right in the middle of the harbour.
But it didn't occur to them to remove the barbed wire around it, around the camp. And when we were driven to the camp and so on, oh my God, not again, barbed wire all around the bloody thing. That was our reaction. The New Zealanders didn't think of it and so on. So by next day, they had taken them off.
We were very well looked after. The food was just the English blend type of food, but there's plenty of it. It was plenty of it, and the fresh air and the river just close by, and the farms and the sheep there and the cows. Some boys, the more adventurous, would go out and try to milk the cows for milk, and so the neighboring farmers were very tolerant, but not very happy with the situation.
We were rather fascinated by the camp in many respects. Life was very much normal, more normal, because very shortly after we arrived at the camp, the school started. We had all lessons in Polish, all subjects were taught in Polish. It wasn't easy because I was very much behind.
It was a Polish camp, a full stop. It was in the full sense of the word. There was no English spoken by us. Only later they started to teach us when they realized we were not going to go back, that their chances are of not going back to Poland.
The idea was that after the end of the war we would be able to return to Poland. But that never eventuated because as the war ended, Poland became a satellite of Soviet Union.
Well, we couldn't go back to Poland because we would be persecuted again, and so on. Poland wasn't free. Poland was taken over by Russia.
And the New Zealand government gave us a choice of either staying in New Zealand or returning to Poland. So we decided to stay in New Zealand.
I can't remember anyone really of the children who just stood up, I want to go back. We knew we were waiting, we were going to return, and somehow that idea was that things will change in Poland.
A few of the families, a few of the children returned to Poland to join up with their relatives there, or parents, or whoever was left there. And virtually everyone that I've met of these former, about 90-odd children that went back, they were very, very, very sorry or regretted their departure from New Zealand. They think of New Zealand as a lost paradise. That's how they describe it.
Polish government in London, who was paying the staff who were looking after us, was no longer recognized and therefore could no longer continue with it, and there was an agreement with New Zealand government, and New Zealand government took over the care of the Polish children.
The government decided to take care of us and gave us a chance to either go to work or learn trades or go to school.
But then eventually it was decided by the authorities that the camp would close after the last of the children, of the youngest children, had finished their Polish schooling there. There was a gloom over the camp. You could almost feel it. You feel the darkness, the gloom of knowing. I get emotional sometimes on this, but of knowing that it's all finished. As we moved from country place to country, the first place that became sort of home was Isfahan, but the Pahiatua eventually became home, to the point where the camp was disbanded, closed down. There was a lot of sad faces around, we leaving home.
Well, I was in the camp for only 1 year, but from the camp we were being sent to schools and all over New Zealand. And New Zealand families were asked, would they like to take a Polish child, an orphan or something, and send them to school and so on.
Our knowledge of the English language was not sufficient. It was very, very pidgin English. But in St. Mary's College, there were many Polish girls here that came at the same time. So they put us into one class and tried to concentrate only on English as far as possible. We had an excellent teacher there, and she really went back into this sort of beginning spelling you had to learn. And I'll never forget when we were traveling by tram and we would be repeating our spelling. Beautiful. Wonderful.
I was sent to a school in Oamaru on the South Island, and I stayed there for 5 years. And then I came back to Wellington, then worked in accounting offices, like mainly in big firms. And the one that I stayed the longest was about 70 years, was Ford Motor Company. And then that enabled me to buy a house in Coro in Wellington here, and establish a family after I met Stefania and married her.
I think I've seen him from the distance in the camp, but I didn't pay any attention. And of course, what really happened, Joseph was in Oamaru, but used to come for holidays later to Wellington. A whole group of us got together, young people, and we used to go tramping on picnics and things like that. And that's how we really got to go and know one another.
56 years ago, 60 years ago now.
And he did everything properly. He spoke to my father first. My father wasn't informed, but he asked for permission to marry me.
We had 4 children, and here we are now. Our children just about married off now, all the older ones, and got 15 or 14 grandchildren, and we are happy here now.
I was lucky to have met my wife, who is also Polish, and we live in this bilingual world. I'm completely bilingual. My accent is undoubtedly a foreign accent. It's not a New Zealand accent. But I tell the New Zealand, listen, you are the ones that have an accent. I've been here longer than you have, because I've been here 75 years. And how long have you been here, pray? So it's just part of life. There's no bitterness in it at all. It's just thankful that I have managed to live in 2 cultures and live the 2 cultures side by side.
Mum wrote to me and she said that they would like to come to New Zealand. Mum actually lived through hell, having lost her children. It wasn't very easy for anyone to be allowed to come from the Eastern Bloc. And it took a long time, and by the time everything was done, and then, of course, they arrived in New Zealand 17 years later, after seeing them. But I didn't really know them by then. Really. I didn't know, but I was prepared to face it. And so was my brother. But they arrived, and look, they are wonderful people, especially my dad. He had the situation quite right. But I think Mum a bit, I would say that she left little children who sort of like me, I would have been throwing myself on her neck. And, you know, that affection, you are scared of it.
Yeah.
To this day, I'm considered a foreigner in a mild way by the New Zealanders, and I'm considered a foreigner back in my own land in Poland. That's the shape of it. So, which was probably just as well, because that made me realize quickly that where my place is. This is my family here, and I'm used to this climate. I like the Wellington cold winds and rain. I actually do like it. We have a Polish association in Wellington. We had a number of reunions now. Every 5 years, our children and grandchildren organize the reunions for us. It's a big event. People come from all over New Zealand and also from overseas to the former children. So yes, we keep contact now. I have a very good friend of mine is Józef Zawada, who only lives down the road, 6 kilometers away, but that's down the road. Stefania is also one of the former children. There's a number of them are scattered around here.
In fact, I'm really in contact with nearly all of them, because it so happened that I'm one of these people that clings to the past, I remember many of the friends that were at the camps and all that. I keep in touch with them, and people are sort of, well, let's face it, we're all passing away.
We never returned back to Poland permanently, simply because there was nothing to return back to. And so it was a gradual process. Eventually you started to put your root in here one way, you had your root in the other leg over there, but eventually it all became common ground. There were 2 localities from opposite sides of the world which became one. That's the best way I can describe it. Our parents wanted us to be educated. That's why they left their native village just north of Krakow to migrate to the east before the war, so they could afford to educate us. But well, one of their wishes came true, because we became educated in a foreign country, but we did. So that's my life.
This episode of Stories from the East and West was written and produced by Piotr Wołoczko for Culture.pl and hosted by me, Adam Żuławski. It was edited by Wojciech Elekshak with some help from me, and Wojciech also did all the music and sound design. We'd like to thank Józef and Stefania Zawada, Stanisław Manteres and Malwina Zofia Rubisz-Świters for sharing their stories with us, and a special thanks to Ambassador Zbigniew Gniatkowski and Anna Gołębicka-Buchanan at the Polish Embassy in Wellington for helping us produce the episode. Make sure to subscribe or check our feed next month. On the last day of November, we'll be releasing a story about a man who gave an entire country hope in the darkest of times. See you then.